Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Caitlin Nobes. I am here to give you just a few housekeeping items before we go into today's fantastic workshop. I've been a Toastmaster for almost 3 years at the Albany Club Toastmasters. I love our club's high standard of evaluation and warm, supportive atmosphere, and I'm currently serving as the VP of PR for the club. Before we start, everyone is muted, so please use the chat function to participate and send through questions during the presentation. Today's presentation is being recorded, so if you prefer not to appear in the recording, please keep your video off for the duration. We'll also be taking a few screenshots of today's workshop, and it is your choice whether or not you want to be visible. I'd like to thank and acknowledge Alan Matthew for providing access to their Zoom account for today's workshop. And finally, I'd like to encourage you all to complete the feedback survey, which I will link to in the chat now and at the end of this presentation. Your feedback is truly meaningful to our speaker, and as Toastmasters, we understand the value of evaluation, so I hope most of you will take part in the survey. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce your workshop presenter for today, George Anastasopoulos. I know George from Albany Club Toastmasters, where he has become an informal mentor for me. I always appreciate the wisdom and insights that he shares, and I have frequently asked him specifically to be my evaluator because I know I'll get important constructive feedback to help me be an even better speaker. George has many impressive qualifications, including having taught at the University of Toronto and Schulich Executive Education Center. He is a credentialed coach with the International Coach Federation, a certified sales leader with the Canadian Professional Sales Association, and certified analyst with Thomas International on a variety of their assessment tools. George is also a veteran business operator with a 20-year corporate career in senior sales, marketing, and general management roles. Most of his clients are senior managers, executives, and business owners across a variety of industries. George's clients become influential leaders, perform at their best, build championship teams, produce superior results, and reach their goals because he helps them do less, accomplish more, and make a difference. He brings fun, flair, and passion as a storyteller with poignant insights and anecdotes. Please welcome George Anastasopoulos with his workshop, Do Less, Accomplish More, Make a Difference. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was a terrific introduction, a great setup, much appreciated. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here and taking time out of your busy weekend, out of a relaxing weekend, out of your Sunday to be here and spend time together. Many of you will be familiar with the image that you see on your screen here. And if you're not familiar with it, you will know, you will not be surprised to know that this comes from the stage play Les Miserables. Now, Les Miserables is a beautiful production that my wife and I first saw many, many years ago, and we thoroughly enjoyed it and had tickets to the Les Mis performance in 2020, only to disappointingly not be able to attend it simply because of the COVID restrictions that prevented it from happening. For those of you who are not familiar with the story of Les Miserables, it was set in the tail end of the 18th century, the French Revolution, Paris, France. And during the tail end of the 18th century, the French Revolution, there was the abolishment of the monarchy. And by the way, the monarchy was not a particularly effective form of government and wasn't in any country of the world for all intents and purposes. In fact, most monarchies were either very ineffective or downright despotic in their approach. And the revolution saw the abolishment of the monarchy, the establishment of a republic, and along the way, King Louis XVI lost his head. Why is that important? Because for thousands of years, and even more thousands of years leading up to the revolution in France and in other countries for that matter, there were monarchs, there were kings. It's just the way it was. It was unthinkable not to have a monarchy because that's just the way things were. But some people stood up and said, you know what, we refuse to accept the way it is. It is a bad form of government. It is oppressive, it is ineffective, and on, and we will create a different form of government. And they defied conventional wisdom. They defied the cultural inertia of the way it is. Welcome to Do Less, Accomplish More, Make a Difference. Some of you, if not all of you, this slide might resonate with you. As you see, there's two cavemen. The one is pulling a cart full of rocks. The other one is pushing it along. And it just happens to have square wheels. And in the cart, there are a bunch of rocks. One of the cavemen says, "No, thanks. We're too busy," says the other, to a third caveman who was trailing behind, happened to be carrying 2 round wheels. So I'm just going to ask you to open up your chat box right now. And since this is a participative workshop, let me ask you to type in this chat box right now, where are you with busy? As you look at this slide and this image of these 2 cavemen who are too busy to actually see the innovation that's coming their way, where are you with busy? Type in the chat box a couple of reactions here. Let's hear where you are with busy. Are you the caveman pulling or pushing the cart? Or are you the caveman in behind with the square wheels? Rhonda says square wheels. Yeah, I get it, Rhonda. Me too, in many cases. Exactly. Extremely busy with everything virtually. Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. Absolutely. Someone else, use your chat box. This is an engagement exercise and an opportunity for you to express how you are with this, because this is the foundation of our workshop here today. Despite no commuting, busier than ever. How true is that, Andrew? Even though we're not commuting and some of those things that actually allowed us some downtime from work, we're actually busier. It depends on the urgency. Get the rock when they're needed. Between behind and round wheels. Okay, interesting. That would be very interesting. I'm in the box of rocks. Yeah, I am the box of rocks. You got it. You got it. I follow the conventions. Can see possible changes on occasion, then problems. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is the 21st century life we live. And I share this with you, not as merely a way to ingest a little bit of tiny humor at the beginning of our conversation here today, but in fact to really provoke you to do 2 things during the course of this conversation that we're going to have in the presentation that I'm going to share. I'm going to ask you if you feel anything like these cavemen pulling or pushing the cart with the square wheels. I'm going to, in the first half of this presentation, share with you a reason for you to pause, to stop, and to listen to the guy at the back with the round wheels. And in the second half of this presentation, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what that guy with the round wheels has to say and why it's good for you. So thank you for getting started. Let's proceed. During the course of our workshop here together, there's 3 elements that I'm going to ask you to pay attention to. Number 1 is I'm hoping that I can enlighten you with some things that might provide some insights that are valuable to you. And that, of course, is very important. This will be an engaging and interactive session. So as you can see, I've opened up the chat box already and encouraged you to participate and to share your thoughts, because we're not engaged if all thoughts are merely up here in our heads. When you see this particular image, then this is an opportunity for me to prompt our Zoom master to launch a poll. This is not when we're going to launch a poll today, right now. But when you see this image come up, we'll be launching polls. And there'll be 3 polls that will be launched during the course of our time here together over the 60 minutes to gauge your feedback and reactions to what are being shared here today. And then finally, if there's something you absolutely want to comment on, if there's a question that's burning at you that you really want to get off your chest, well, that's what the chat box there is there for. Just get it off your chest, put it in the chat box. Caitlin is going to be monitoring and paying attention to what's being jotted in there. And if it's something that's valuable to share with the group and or a question that might be helpful to expand on a concept, please post it, and you're welcome to be involved in that. On the opening slide, I talked about injustice and a cultural inertia called monarchies. Cultural inertia called monarchies, because that's just the way it is for thousands and thousands of years. But it wasn't limited to just the concept of monarchies. You see, cultural inertia existed in a variety, and still exists today in a variety of different places. In 1865, the US Civil War saw the abolishment of slavery. But for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, slavery was a way of life. It's just the way it was. We took over other countries. We relegated many of their people to slavery. It became a form of an economic model of the way businesses were run for thousands of years. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that it was right. In fact, it wasn't right. It was very wrong. It was injustice on a grand scale, but it was cultural inertia, and it was just the way it is. 100 years ago, women earned the right to vote in the British Empire, in the United States, and in Canada, more or less around 100 years ago. But for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, women did not have these rights, and women have not had rights for those thousands and thousands of years. Why? Well, it was just the way it is, otherwise known as cultural inertia. No matter how unjust it was, it's just the way it is. But it took courage in both these cases, as well as the example on the monarchy, to stand up and say, I refuse to accept the way it is. And it took courage and action to change things. Well, cultural inertia exists today at work, and it is not just. For example, according to the American Institute of Stress, 1 in 4 employees is either often or very often burned out. 8 out of 10 suffer physical or psychological symptoms. 6 out of 10 end their day with work-related neck pain, probably even more now because we're all sitting at a computer hunched over. And 1 in 5 have either quit their job or been driven to tears at work. Now, can you just imagine if you were posting a job to fill a job, and you're looking for candidates, and in the description of the job, you identify that the successful candidate will have a 1 in 5 chance of being driven to tears once they join your company and work for you. How long a lineup do you think you're going to have? But that is unfortunately the reality of the cultural inertia that's being experienced in the workplace. The statistics go on and on. Let me share just a couple more. 67% of employees are either disengaged or actively disengaged, according to Gallup research. That's 2/3 of employees are either disengaged or actively disengaged. By the way, the latter means sabotaging someone in their company or the company itself. And according to Mercer Consulting, 8 out of 10, or almost 9 out of 10 employees are open to job offers or actively looking to move. Yeah, there is a lot wrong in the way work is getting done. And as you demonstrated through your comments in the chat box about how you are with busy, you're kind of experiencing it. And of course, COVID is not helping matters simply because it's created even further stress and further changes to the way we work that has augmented the problem. Now, I'm a coach and spend much of my time coaching and working with people through their workplace challenges and opportunities. And so the numbers being what they are, I'm all about people. I'm about people. And these are some of the things that I've heard the folks I work with say more and more and ongoing. Things like, it's never been this crazy. I can't believe how much we're supposed to do. Everything's a priority. I'm being virtually meetinged to death. And I deal with like 100 emails a day. These are the things that people are saying. Now, if some of this sounds familiar, you may have heard others say this. Heck, you might have actually said this yourself. So what I'm going to ask you to do is open up your chat boxes again. And I'm going to ask you to complete this sentence by filling in the blank with a few words. And here's the sentence. I would describe this time in my career as blank. I would describe this time in my career as blank. Fill in the blank, if you would, a word or two, and see where we come up. Developmental. Thank you, Jim. Someone else. Let's type in how would you lonely? Yeah, Rhonda, absolutely. Yeah, as the beginning. Finally. And what I've always wanted. Time to step back, challenging yet expansive. My stepping stone, exploratory, very positive outlooks, the way you've described, many of you are describing, disgruntled, exploratory, stable. Yeah, these are interesting times, aren't they? They're challenging times. Paralyzing and isolated. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Paralyzing and isolated, lonely. Difficult, challenging, complex, uncertain. Words that are really difficult to wrap yourselves around in the context of work. And so the workplace is about doing so much busy, so much stuff, so much being asked of us right? Surviving. Yeah, Ken, absolutely. Absolutely. Isolated is the word that goes well with lonely. Indeed. Indeed. And it is about people, not just about the numbers. And it isn't reality TV. I was coaching a young manager about a year or so ago, 2 years ago now, and a terrific young woman, aspiring, smart, ambitious, hardworking, sharp. And she said to me when I was chatting with her at one point, she said, "I have a new manager, even more demanding than the old one." And I asked her, I said, "Well, how will you cope with this?" And she said, "Well, I'll cope. I can do this." And I reminded her, I said, "You remember how bad it feels when job demands and stresses make you an impatient wife and a mom desperately missing her daughter?" And there was a pause, a brief pause at that moment. And in a cracking voice, she said, "But George, what am I to do?" And I said, "Less." Shocking concept. And so I'd like to pause it right now for just a moment and ask Renee, our Zoom master, if you would please, Renee, launch our first poll, because I'd like to get your reaction now to "It's just the way it is." And so Renee, if you would, here it is. So it's just the way it is, and here are your choices. And that's the way it should be. And by the way, there are no right or wrong answers here. We're just trying to get a sense for how you feel about "It's just the way it is." Or, "I'm okay with the way it is." Or, "It's not fine, but what can I do?" Or, "It's not fine, but I'm afraid to take action." Or finally, "It's not fine, and me, want to change it." So choose the one that best reflects where you are. Enter it now. And Renee, as soon as we get close to, or more or less around 100% of respondents, let's close the poll and show the results, please. All right. And the poll looks like it's been closed. And here are the results. Wow. Can everyone see that? 61%, two-thirds of you, nearly two-thirds of you said it's not fine, and me, want to change it. You are the courageous people who 100 years ago would have stood up and said, "No, women deserve the right to vote. Women deserve equal rights." You are the people who 150 years ago said slavery is wrong and I'm doing something about it. And 250 years ago said the monarchy does not work and we need a better form of government. Yeah, it's not fine, and me, I want to change it. So kudos to you who have shared that. If you would, Renee, you can close that poll, or I suppose I could. There we go. Okay. But unfortunately, as bad as the system appears to be in terms of causing us the headaches and the stresses and the pains and the injustices that we're going through, I hate to break the even worse news to you, and that is, I'm sorry to say it's you. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's you. And this is in no way a criticism, but a recognition of the following things that most of us, that is you and us and me, are going through in our workplace, whether I'm an employee as a first-line manager, whether I'm an employee doing my work as a productive contributor, whether I'm a manager managing stuff, whether I'm a manager managing a variety of people in my area, or whether I'm a senior executive. It's you. It's you. Why? Because we're obsessed. We're obsessed in getting it right, or more likely preventing it from going wrong, because failure is bad and looking bad is even worse. And that is a belief system that we've grown up with through our schooling system and from a very young childhood to now, and it's exacerbated within the work environment. And that is failure is bad, and looking bad is even worse, because there are career, compensation, and reputation consequences in the workplace for getting it wrong. So we're obsessed with getting it right. What else are we obsessed with? We're obsessed with being in control, being involved in everything, in all the meetings, dealing with 100+ emails a day, knowing everything, having all the answers, issuing all the instructions. Man, I'm exhausted already. But we got to be in control, because for some reason, being in control is a good thing in the world of work. Now, I'm not saying any of these are bad things. I'm saying we're obsessed. And finally, we're obsessed with fixing other people's problems, especially if we're in the world of management and managing. So if we're in the world of managing and managing others and being involved with others, we're obsessed with fixing other people's problems. I'll share an example. I was coaching a woman. She's the vice president of a department at her company. And she said to me, George, I'm taking maternity leave in 3 months' time, and I'm really concerned about Jim. And I asked her, what's the deal with Jim? She goes, well, Jim is my replacement. He's coming from one of the other departments in our company. He's a capable guy, but I'm really concerned about his readiness to take over my job when I go away. And I'm really concerned about how well he's going to do while I'm away. It's keeping me up at night. I said, I see. Well, let me ask you a question. I asked her. I said, by curiosity, why is this your problem? And there was a pause on the telephone because clearly she thought I had something wrong with me. She said, well, because it's my department. I said, I get that. So let me ask you again, why is this your problem? She goes, because if he does something that goes sideways, I've worked very hard to get my department to operate smoothly, effectively, productively, and, with a good culture and camaraderie and collaboration. And so I don't want that going to waste. I said, I get all of that too. Let me ask you the question a different way. Who owns the problem of Jim's readiness and ability to perform while you're away? Right now, who owns it? There was a pause on the telephone and she said, well, gee, I guess I own it. I said, who should own it? And again, there was a pause on the phone and she said, well, I suppose maybe Jim should own it. About 10 more minutes of coaching and we were done. And during our next meeting, I asked her, how are things with Jim? She goes, it was the best meeting I ever had. Tell me about it, I asked her. She goes, I went to Jim and I said, Jim, I am committed to you performing extraordinarily well in this role while I'm away and making sure you're ready before I leave. What can I do to make sure that that happens? And I had a great conversation with Jim, and he's the one who got excited about creating his own training and orientation plan so that he feels like he's fully equipped and fully armed to be able to perform at his best while I'm away. And I helped edit it with him, and I didn't have to do any of it. It was all his, and I supported him on it. I did less. The concept of accountability. Whose problem is this? Sorry, it's you. Why? Because we're obsessed with fixing other people's problems. Why is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing? Because if we're solving everybody else's problems, if we are involved in everything, if we're controlling everything, if we're trying so hard to get everything right, then we're not doing the things we ought to be doing. In other words, solving the issue that isn't the issue won't get us far. And so when we're doing all the things that we're obsessed with on the previous slide, what are we not doing? And I ask managers a lot. I ask them, what do you think your big issues are? And they say things like, well, time management, so I get it all done, or I don't delegate well, or I don't delegate enough. And on the surface, those look like, pretty legitimate issues. It's time management, so I get it all done. I don't delegate well enough. 100 plus years ago, Henry Ford, who revolutionized the automobile industry and the production line in North America, he said, if I had asked customers what they wanted, they would have said, if I'd asked people and customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. It wasn't the issue. It was a different issue. And the same thing with us here. Time management isn't the issue. How I delegate isn't the issue. The real issue is, and it's a bigger issue, is I'm bogged down in the small stuff. That's the bigger issue. Me, I'm bogged down in the small stuff. I think I need time management, or I think I need to delegate better, but it's me. I'm tied down. I'm tied up. I'm bogged down in the small stuff. And in fact, you're missing even the core issue beneath that. And the core issues are I'm not doing what needs doing. Now, whether that is being strategic or creative thinking or dealing with the bigger things, I'm not doing what needs doing. And even worse, I'm not taking accountability. Yep. Now, that might sound harsh. I'm not taking accountability because I prefer to blame the way it is. Sound familiar? I prefer to blame others, the situations, versus taking action. It's easier. So these are what we will struggle through continuously. So just like Henry Ford, you know, building a faster horse is not the solution. Time management is not the solution. Delegating better is not the solution. Delegating better just moves the solution or moves the problem to someone else. Because we're bogged down on the small stuff, we're not doing what needs doing, and we're not taking accountability for doing the things that need to be done. And in the second half of today, I'll show you how. And it's about shifting the way we view our world in the world of work, from manager thinking to leader thinking. For example, manager beliefs include things like managers obsess over the detail, because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to obsess over the detail, ask lots of questions about what's going on. Managers obsess over the details. Leaders, by comparison, they pounce on the essential by not allowing themselves to get bogged down in the detail. So the first step in truly changing our workplaces and ourselves so that we do less, accomplish more, and make a difference is to shift our beliefs from manager thinking to leader thinking. Here are some other beliefs within the manager-leader spectrum for you to consider. Managers are accountable. Remember the example of Jim a slide or two ago? Managers are accountable. Leaders instill accountability in others. Managers can't say no. They don't have a choice. Leaders make others better by standing firm. Managers do it all perfectly right now, or try to anyway. Leaders triage really well. Managers deal with it. It is the tasks, the work, the duties, the strategies, the processes, the rules, the issues, the problems, the opportunity, a bunch of it's. Managers deal with it. Leaders are about who. Managers it, leaders who. And so I'd like to ask Renee, this is our opportunity again to launch our second poll, because I want to get your reaction to the concept of, oh no, it's me. I'm the one. This is kind of, I'm kind of doing this to myself. So here's your poll, if you will. Oh no, it's me. If you would, please select the statement that best represents your thoughts on this. No way, I'm the victim here. Or I see where I might be overmanaging. Or it's okay, it's me. My overmanaging is obsessive. Or I want to do less managing and more leading. Or finally, I am committed to doing less, accomplishing more, and making a difference. If you would, select the statement that best represents where you are on what I've shared with you, and then we'll move into the second half of our material here today. And Renee, when you're close to or about at 100% of respondents, if you would just close the poll, publish the results, and let's see how people feel about this. Oh no, it's me. All right, there we go. About half of you said, I want to do less managing and more leading. And then a further third of you said, I am committed to doing less, accomplishing more, and making a difference. And 1 in 5 said, okay, it's me. My overmanaging is obsessive, yes. And I want you to know it isn't your fault, because it's called cultural inertia. It's just the way it is. We get so used to it that we just kind of can't imagine a different world. Monarchies, inequality in terms of women's rights, slavery. I mean, we just can't imagine anything different while we're in the middle of cultural inertia. So it's no one's fault, it just is. Thank you, Renee. You can close that poll now. I'd like to continue because now I'm going to shift gears on us. Because in the first half, I promised you what I was going to do is I'm going to ask you to pause long enough to go talk to the person with the round wheels. And now I'm going to share with you a little bit about what that person with the round wheels has to say on helping you move forward in doing less, accomplishing more, and making a difference. And the first of, and by the way, before I get to this particular slide, in the previous slide, what I helped you understand was this concept of belief shifts from manager to leader. I'm now going to share with you some skills, some things you can do differently that will equip you to do less, accomplish more, and make a difference. And the first topic is a topic that we all many of us, maybe not all of us, but many of us choose to either avoid, leave the room on, not confront, or just generally not deal with, and it's the concept of conflict. Oh man, I don't want to bring this up. Jim's going to get upset. I don't want to say anything. It's not my place. And if you look in the dictionary, conflict is defined as incompatible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or demands. And there's a belief around conflict that says if I'm having conflict, that makes me a bad team player, which in fact is not necessarily true. And I'll show you how that works. Because conflict lives within collaboration. It's not possible to truly collaborate if you're not dealing with when this comes up. And harmony is not necessarily positive. I remember an instance where I was chatting with some friends a bunch of years ago, and the fellow was saying how, many of his friends were commenting on how he and his wife seemed to be the perfect couple. How the two of them had such harmony in their lives, how, one would finish the other person's sentence. They always seemed to be just on the same page and so harmonious. And it was so wonderful, George. And after 12 years of marriage, she left me. There's stuff underneath that just didn't get dealt with. So harmony, or at least apparent harmony on its own, is not necessarily positive. And so what do we do about it? Let's move this along. I want to talk about this thing called confrontation within the concept of conflict, because it's part of life. Let's deal with the important, somewhat challenging sounding things right off the bat. Do I have to? Do I really have to confront someone? That's such a bad word, isn't it? Because if I check the dictionary, it says confrontation is coming face to face with someone with hostile or argumentative intent. Well, quite honestly, I don't think I want to line up for that. It doesn't sound terribly pleasant. But if I continue reading the dictionary definition of confront, it says to face up to and deal with a problem or difficulty. Oh, well, that's kind of what I do. That's part of my job description. And most of our job descriptions is to do exactly that. So let's face up to and deal with this problem or difficulty. I'd like to illustrate with one simple skill here. And this is the first of three that I'll share with you in the next 20 minutes or so. And the first is called, shockingly, confront easily. Maybe an oxymoron? How does one actually do that? Let's find out. I was chatting to a fellow who was a manager in an organization. He was complaining to me not that long ago, actually, just before COVID. He said, George, I don't know what's going on with my company. He says, I don't know what to say to my boss. He's driving me crazy. Everybody's driving me crazy. I'm working 10 more hours a week. I've got tasks coming at me from a variety of sources, from a variety of people. And a lot of times these tasks are in conflict. And I'm just so super upset about it all. And he's venting. And I paused him and I said, before you go any further, his name's Michael. I said, Michael, before you go any further, I said, can you just repeat to me specifically, if you would, just give me the facts. Just give me the facts. What's going on? He says, what's going on is I'm working 10 more hours a week and I'm getting new tasks from a variety of people, and often these tasks are in conflict. I said, terrific. I said, can you share what you just told me? Just like that, concisely, concretely, without judgment and without generalities. Can you share that with your manager? He goes, yeah, I can do that. I said, okay, well, that's the first of 4 steps to help you deal with this. He goes, really? No kidding. Okay, so that's the first of 4 steps. Yeah. He goes, okay, what's step number 2? So, well, step number 2, I'm going to ask you, what's the impact of what you just described? Well, I said, the impact, he says, I'm only accomplishing maybe 60% of what I'm expected to do. I'm not an effective resource for the company, and my strengths are not being utilized. I said, okay, I get that. Can you share what you just said with me with your manager as step number 2? He goes, yeah, I can do that. By now, he's writing this out. He goes, great. Okay, so George, you said there were 4 steps. What's step number 3? Well, step number 3, I'm going to ask you is, how does that make you feel? He goes, are you kidding? I feel like a rag doll. I got it. I said, can you share that with your manager? He goes, yes. Yes, I got this, George. He says, I see it. It's like concrete, concise, no judgment, facts, the impact, and then how it makes me feel. What's step number 4? I said, step number 4 is a tough one. He goes, is it really? Well, what's step number 4? I said, step number 4 is you shut up. Because you shut up. I said, yeah, you don't say anymore. That's it. You just stop. He goes, yeah, but what are you talking about? He says, my manager is going to get defensive or possibly even aggressive, or they may start questioning or maybe even deflect and change the topic, George. Like, what are you talking about? Shut up. I can't just stop because this is going to happen. I said, what do I do? I said, you thank them and then you repeat steps 1 through 4. You thank them for whatever they said. If you choose to add, that's not what I'm here to talk about, you're welcome to, but nothing more. You don't embellish, you don't change, you don't edit. You essentially repeat verbatim, word for word, steps 1 through 3, and then you shut up. Okay, so just repeat. Yeah. How many times? As often as necessary. Because eventually your manager is going to become receptive. They're going to like, okay, I guess we got to talk about this. At which point you now have license to discuss it, the specific it that you brought to the party, the fact that you're working longer hours, that you have more tasks coming from various people, and that they are often in conflict, and how that makes you feel and the impact that has. As opposed to deflecting and talking about something else where you're going to get dragged into arguing and defending why you're saying what you're saying, and now you're going down a rabbit hole and you've lost. You will not accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. It's over, and you have lost the confrontation easily because now it's become an argument. Because I get that. I can do this. I think I can do this. And he said, is there anything else? Yeah, I said, there's one other thing. I said, there's 2 questions you absolutely must ask your manager during this conversation. What will you do about this? And how can I help you? And the how can I help you has to deal with the topic you brought to the party, the 10 more hours a week, the fact that you're doing conflicting tasks and so forth. Confront easily. 4 simple steps. What we generally do, though, is we allow the other party, when we confront easily, whether it's our boss or someone else, to get defensive or aggressive or start questioning, and then we answer their questions and we start validating and justifying and explaining and providing more insights and so forth, and eventually we fall into a rabbit hole and it's all over and we've lost. We've not accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. We stick to these 4 steps, the outcome is positive. He did exactly this. Months later, I asked him, when I revisited with him, I said, what were the results of that conversation with your boss? Like, what happened? Like, did anything come of it? He goes, are you kidding me? He says, I've got a reduced workload. The tasks that I was getting are actually gotten moved to people who should get them in the first place. He says, I'm working fewer hours. I'm more effective, and I'm being acknowledged for my work, which is such a pleasure. Confront easily. There's no emotion here. There's no anger. There's no pain. There's just the facts, and there's no arguing. And then you talk about it. And you ask the other party, what do you do about it? What do you do about this? And how can I help you? That's the first of the 3 skills I wanted to share with you. Here's the second. And the second comes in 2 component parts, which make up for the 3 that I'm talking about. And the second one deals with SAC. By the way, if you do this, and I promise you, you won't get sacked. But it's essentially situational accountability contracting, SAC. And here's an example of what it looks like. You get a request, or you send a request. And your request goes out to, pardon me. And your request goes out, or a request comes into you. And here's an example of it from Jane, who sends a request to Tom. And Jane's request reads, hi, Tom. If you would please, I need a report for the quarter dealing with the customer issues from last month. Please get this to me by end of day Tuesday. I need to get my summary off to Bill as soon as possible. Now, Bill sounds like he might be the boss. Now, Tom is looking at this and wondering, oh, great. Now what do I do? I've got this and I've got to get it done, or maybe I don't have to get it done, or does she really need it and I don't know? And I wonder, who's this for? Who does this benefit? And of course, it benefits Jane, because Tom doesn't really know, unless he's had to face this many, many times, what this report is really all about. So Tom is left with 4 possible choices. Just 4 possible choices. The first of those possible choices is to do what's been asked of him. And in doing what's been asked of him, what we fail to appreciate is that he has to not do something else in order to do what's been asked of him. Something's got to give. Because if Tom is like everyone else who's currently attending this workshop, his plate is full. There is stuff on the plate. In fact, there's stuff falling off the plate. It's so full. And so in order for Tom to actually get this done, he's got to give something up. He might have to give up some personal time. He might have to give up some other project that he's working on or some other duty that's required of him in order to get it done. But whatever it is, he's got to give something up in order to get this done. His second possible option is to, I'm going to send Jane the spreadsheet. Rather than preparing a report, which takes time and effort, I'm just going to send her the raw data, and hopefully that makes her happy. And she goes away. In other words, subpar work. So option number 1, do it and sacrifice something in doing it. Option number 2 is, deliver a substandard effort, hoping that that satisfies the request. Option number 3, he doesn't do it. And then Wednesday rolls around and Jane's on the phone, calls Tom and says, Tom, I needed that report. I needed it by Tuesday. What's going on? Tell me come on, man. I mean, that's what Bill was asking. And Tom says, well, Jane, I tried, but I had this thing, and then there was the fire in the kitchen, and there was this emergency, and I was short-staffed, and I had somebody on mat leave. And of course, Jane buys it because her world is no different. And then there's choice number 4. And choice number 4 is to delegate this to the next Tom, the other person down the line. And that is an awful choice, because all it does is move the problem to someone else. And it's no longer my problem and now somebody else's problem. Yeah, that's real good collaboration, isn't it? Let's just delegate it to somebody else. Those are the 4 possible choices that Tom is left with. But no, there aren't, because there's a 5th. And I'll share with you how to go about that 5th. First thing I want to point out is I let you down. In this example, I let you down, not I personally, Jane let you down, because Jane, in presenting her email to Tom, Jane did not enroll Tom in her cause, why she needed what she needed. She just sent a request, said, hey, Tom, I need a report. This is what it looks like. And Tom, good little soldier, either did it or didn't do it or did it badly or delegated it to someone else. Shame on you. Shame on you, Jane. You did not enroll Tom in your cause. He didn't have any vested interest in the outcome of what it was he was being asked to do. And Tom, shame on you. You didn't do anything about it. You didn't take any action to understand the purpose of Jane's request and to offer any insights or suggestions on maybe doing it better, or the fact that it might not have been as necessary as Jane maybe thought it was. Here are the 2 skills that I'm going to share with you in situational accountability contracting to deal with what I've just shared with you here today. By the way, open up your chat box, and if you think about the email I just shared with you before, if you would, write in a number. How many of those kinds of emails do you either get or send in a typical week? Open up your chat box and let's get a flavor for this. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. How many emails like that when someone just asks you for something? 25, 20, yeah, half a dozen, easily. Yeah, 20, exactly. And then you wonder why you're not doing your job? A bit too many to count. Thanks, Ellen. Exactly. You're wondering, how come I'm not doing the big things that need doing? How come I haven't, broken through any big wins lately? Why haven't I been able to secure, and complete this major project? You got it. So we're letting each other down. The person making the request is not enrolling the other party in why it's important. And the person receiving the request is not challenging it in any way. So here are the 2 skills that I'm going to offer you as a way to deal with this. By the way, if you do this first one, you're going to be very surprised, and I'll explain why. So part one, here's the first of the two skills. Part one is what I refer to as the you probably should know. You probably should know. And this is the way it goes. Tom goes to Jane after Jane has sent him this request, or he calls her and he says, Jane, you probably should know. Thank you. I love you and I want to help. Now, this is crucial. Tom has to say this. He has to thank Jane for what's come his way, demonstrate some form of collegial affection and connection and collaboration with Jane. And whether he says, I love you in a work context is entirely up to Tom. Or he could say something like, hey, listen, I appreciate our working relationship and I really do want to help you. By the way, I say I love you to practically all of my clients and colleagues, so I don't see the problem in it. But hey, we're not all the same, and it may not be politically correct within the world that you're in. But this is absolutely crucial that this first step happen in part one. Thank you, I love you, I want to help. Then Tom says, you should know, Jane, that this requires X amount of dollars or X amount of effort to complete and requires this amount of work or personal time shifting. You probably should know. This is what you're asking of me, this is what it requires. And then lastly, knowing this, Jane, how important is this to you? Essentially, what's the return on investment? Do this, and two things will happen. Number one, there's a very good chance the request that's been asked of you either gets withdrawn or it gets changed. And secondly, you're training the other party. You're training the other party to actually think about what they're asking for and whether or not it is the right way, the best way of what's needed. Part two is what you do if this doesn't work and if you want to take it further. In part two, if the thing you're being asked of is, let's say, worth it, big enough, and you get to define what big enough is, whether it's, a day's worth of your time or an hour's worth of your time or a week's worth, you'd get to define if you think it's worth it. So if part one doesn't work, you go to part two. And part two, you ask these few questions, real simple questions. Tom asks Jane, how will this that you're asking for, how will it be used, by whom and for what? What's the real need? How will this help us meet our goals? And finally, what's the better way? I want to stress that these four questions that Tom is asking Jane are not for Tom's benefit. They are for Jane's benefit. This is for Jane to truly understand what it is she wants and needs or is asking for and how it contributes to the overall need or the opportunity to meet the goals. This is for Jane's benefit. And Tom just asks these questions. Now, this may succeed and it may not. This might get the request edited or withdrawn or changed or whatever, and it may not. But the point is, once this starts to happen, everybody starts to realize that it's re-engineering the way requests are made internally, how challenges are made, how work gets done to meet the company's goals. And a bunch of the doing, requests do, requests do, requests do, a whole bunch of doing, just goes away. Practice SAC, Situational Accountability Contracting, part one and part two, and you won't get sacked, I promise you. Situational Accountability Contracting. We could, but I'm just going to open it up right now, rather than go to a breakout session because it may not allow us enough time. Let me just open up the chat boxes and ask you to think about what I've shared with you on Confront Easily, the two parts of situational accountability contracting. So as you think about what I've shared here with you, Peter says, yeah, usually ASAP requests. Exactly, which is why part one is so important, Peter, because it's as soon as possible. Like, what does that mean? Like, that is a hopeless and useless way to ask for something as soon as possible. Well, why do you need it in the first place? What makes it so important? Do part one, take it to part two if it's worth it. So let's hear from a few of you and talk a little bit about your reactions to or or the impact of what I've shared with you. Confront Easily and situational accountability contracting. What would be the impact if this actually happened in your workplace? If some or all of what I've just described happened in your workplace? What if you're the next person down the line and the one above just wants to satisfy their boss? What is it? That's exactly what's happening, by the way. And that's exactly what's happening. Is the person who's asking needs to satisfy their boss because they've not done it. They've not done part 1 or part 2. They just want to satisfy their boss because they live in manager thinking. I can't say no. Leader thinking is, I make others better by standing firm. So you're doing it and saying yes because they said yes. If you stand firm, you'll make them better. Yeah, but please share your yeah buts. Often a boss, one of many perhaps, doesn't know how much they're asking from you. Exactly, Ellen. They don't. That's why the first part is so crucial. The first part of situational accountability contracting is you probably should know. You probably should know. Because the manager who's asking needs something. They just probably don't know how much is involved to actually get what they need. Their attention is on satisfying their customer, which might be their boss or an external customer or some other department in the organization. Absolutely. Tough in a virtual world now. An office environment was much easier. Email can be taken one context, even with the best intentions. It's only tough if you want it to be tough. You pick up the telephone, you call somebody. You say, let me, you probably should know how much effort's involved in doing this. Are you telling me you don't want to do it? Didn't say that. I said, you probably should know how much effort's involved in doing this. It requires this much of time. Knowing that, how important is it to you? Did you notice in that third question, knowing this, how important is this to you? Places accountability firmly on the person asking, as opposed to the person pushing back and challenging. It's called leader thinking. And that's how we become better leaders, by practicing a few of these simple skills. You are the solution. Yes, you're obsessed. Yes, I'm obsessed. And we are all obsessed with this cultural inertia we live in called work, of busy, 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 do. But you are the solution. In the first part of today, I shared with you in this workshop belief shifts from manager thinking to leader thinking. Absolutely crucial that those happen. And those take time for those to happen. But once they happen, and as they happen, we practice simple skills. I showed you 3 of them today. One called Confront Easily, and the 2 on situational accountability contracting, parts 1 and 2. Showed you just 3 of more than 3 practical, simple skills. And together, that belief shift and those simple skills will create 6 core competencies in you that are as follows. And these 6 core competencies are all about who, not what, not it, who. It'll allow you to collaborate more effectively, to instill accountability where it belongs, to develop others, to coach them to solve their own problems, to enroll them to your cause, and finally to challenge others and what's asked of you. In fact, if you look at Confront Easily, the first of these skills, in that Confront Easily skill, it allowed both parties to collaborate more effectively. Accountability moved where it belonged to in this case, the manager, to take away tasks and reallocate them to where they better belonged. Michael developed his manager in the process, and in the 6th skill, he challenged his boss at what was asked of him. So 4 of these 6 competencies were being muscle built by Confront Easily, just practicing Confront Easily. In situational accountability contracting, that one happens to muscle build all 6. So recall situational accountability contracting, you probably should know, and then co-create. Once that happens, collaboration is more effective. Accountability is instilled where it belongs. That is the person making the request. They are developed because they are being asked tough questions and being told things they didn't know. You're coaching them to solve their own problems. You're enrolling them into your cause, which is productivity and effectiveness and your fully utilizing your strengths and skills. And lastly, you're challenging effectively. All 6 core competencies are being muscle built by practicing that skill. And so you are the solution, not the other guy, not your boss, not his boss, not her boss, not the chairman of the board. No, they're not you. You're the solution by practicing these belief shifts, by making these belief shifts, practicing these simple skills that will build these 6 core competencies. And when those are built, you will do less, accomplish more, make a difference, and so will everyone else in your organization. And I promise you, there will be career consequences. You will be recognized, appreciated, rewarded, and possibly even promoted. Yeah, you will have career consequences. Final poll to be launched. If you would please, Renee, launch our final poll, and then I'll hand it over to Caitlin to bring it to a close. Final poll, please. I am the solution. What was shared here today? Here are your choices. I don't get it. I don't buy it. Or I get it, but I don't know how to do it. Or I get it, but I'm afraid of doing it. By the way, that would not be uncommon. Pick the one that best represents you. I can do this. Or finally, I'm totally in. So if you would, pick and submit the response that best represents where you are on you are the solution. And Renee, let's see what we've got here. All right, well, fully 100% are in the final 3, with 42% saying I'm totally in, a third saying I can do this, and a quarter saying I get it, but I'm afraid of doing it. And I want to acknowledge those of you who said that, because that's so true. That is so true. I get it, but I'm afraid of doing it. Yeah, and I can reassure you forever, but it takes time and effort and working together to help you overcome a fear of doing things that is in contrary to cultural inertia of the way it is. And so let's bring it to a close. I have written a book. It's called I Love Mondays, which is all about what you just saw here today and more. It's coming out in the next few months. A few things that have been said about the book by advanced readers who have had a chance to read the book and provide feedback on it, and we've edited and adjusted for it and so forth. But it's a story. It has a happy ending. There's a hero. She goes through her ups and her downs. It's a journey to the end, and she is advised and coached by a wise, sage coach who is a non-human character. Hint, hint. And so I'm going to ask you now to use the chat box. And if you'd like to know more about how you can love Mondays, how you can do less, accomplish more, make a difference, and be open to offers and new programs that are coming up to help you with this, just say, I'm in the chat box. We already have your email address, and I'll make sure to put you on our subscriber list so that you've got more information on the book's release and the programs that are coming up in the next couple of months. So please do that. Thank you very much. I see a bunch of I'm in coming through. That is terrific. And so I'll close off and turn it over to Caitlin in just a minute. And I'll leave you with 2 final quotes that are worthy of your time and attention. And that is, when we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. And then finally, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. It has been my pleasure to be here with you today. My name is George Anastasopoulos. I return control over to Caitlin Nobes.
Thank you so much, George. What great takeaways. I can definitely see how your instructions for constructive confrontation are going to help me in my day-to-day job, for sure. I want to thank Renee Chan for her role today as Zoom Master, making sure everything ran smoothly. And once again, acknowledge our appreciation to Alan Matthew for sharing his Zoom account with us today. Finally, before you go, I am dropping the survey into the chat once more. I hope that you will all fill it out. It is really valuable to George to hear your thoughts. Thank you again to George for your fantastic presentation, and thank you all for your attendance today. I hope you found as much value from it as I did. Goodbye, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, all. Good luck.